Hello and happy Wednesday to you. Today we're going to go ahead and talk about the post for Wednesday for the web design class. This was Monday's post where I did a video of me doing some editing on a website using the Astra theme. I'm going to continue today to do some more editing to that website just to give you some insight into some of the different things you can do with that theme or just any themes in general, especially using Elementor. Um, and of course, the take-home test was due on Monday. So if you haven't turned that in, please do. Working on the grading, as I said, for both your websites and the take-home tests. And once you've got all that done, of course, you're working on your SiteGround project. Your final project will be a second website on SiteGround, and of course, they're providing that for free. So you can click here and sign up using your PIMA email address. Okay, so for today, as I said, we're going to do a little more work on that website I created, and we're also going to talk about this PDF that I've uploaded to the website, which is called Website Considerations. And what that is it's some things to consider when you're making your website. So whenever you create a website, it's good to think through the sort of who, what, when, where, how, and why of your website, and maybe even take some notes and write that stuff down, which will give you a clearer path, sort of a roadmap to the website that you're creating. Okay, so we'll come back to that, but let's go ahead and let's look at this site. Just as a reminder, I'm working on this little website to promote a game that I'm developing. And so what we did was we took that home page and we replaced this picture last time. We replaced some of the text. We put a logo in here and here, got rid of a button, put in a little search icon there, the magnifying glass, changed the nature of this button, right? And now we're going to go down because, of course, this page is based on a template, so it's got what we would call filler or placeholder content. So now we have to start going down through the page and seeing, what's there and what we want to get rid of. So the first candidate for getting rid of something is this BS quote here by Adam Sandler. So, that's just a placeholder thing, but I don't really feel the necessity to have a quote in there. So I can go to the back end of my website. I usually work with two tabs open, the front end, which is the front of the website, and the back end, which is the dashboard. And I've logged in here to this page itself, and now I can scroll down and see this section. Now, just as a reminder, the way that you can use Elementor these days is right-clicking will give you the pop-up menu of all the things that you can do, but there's also some options up here. This plus will create a new section. The X, I believe, will delete the section, and then I think this allows you to edit the section. But all of that is available in right-click as well, so you might just get used to doing that. So I can right-click on this, and then I can just simply hit delete. It got rid of one section for me, and then I can try delete again. Okay, and maybe I have to just click this little X just to get rid of that whole box. Okay, that worked, right? Now, if you're anything like me, you probably like to do updates on a regular basis because you're afraid of losing things. So, when you make changes, you can just hit the little update button. You can also click this eyeball here to preview your changes in a new tab, or you can just kind of keep going and save on a regular basis. So I'm pretty regular about the saving that I do because I don't want to lose things. So, I might just hit update. I don't feel the need to go out and preview every time I make a change just because it slows me down. So, I can do that later on. Now, notice also the scrolling that's appearing here. This is the kind of website. It's got, your background image in what's called a fixed position. So it's the background image basically stays there while this scrolls up, right? And then the same is true of this background image. It stays there while you scroll up. So there's kind of a combination of two types of sections going here. There's the sections that scroll that move with you, like this one right here, and then there's the images that kind of stay back there in the background. And of course, because it's Elementor, you can edit this to be whatever you want. Now, one thing I should mention is, you can see these two boxes here, and these are obviously sort of pre-created sections, columns. This layout here was done in three columns. And for me, when I see something like this, my first instinct, if I'm not using it now, is, oh, I'll just, right click and delete this because who needs it, right? But the fact is, you might get an idea for something to put in here. Like maybe you'll put a little piece of, maybe you'll have a new update, and this would be the perfect place to put a piece of text, a colored box that would tell your fans, what's new, and maybe you would balance that out over here with a coupon or something or another update. So, if it, not if it's not broken, don't fix it, but if it sort of the opposite of that, which is like if it has the opportunity to be useful to it, don't destroy it necessarily, right? If you're very anal retentive and you hate seeing things that you don't, aren't being used, you can delete these and always recreate them later. But for me, I'll leave them up there both as an opportunity and maybe a bit of an inspiration. An idea is there. Every time I look at this, I'm like, oh yeah, I should put something there. And then eventually will get me to take advantage of that opportunity. Um, okay, so next we have this thing called upcoming events, right? Now, uh, my idea behind my website here is that it's going to educate people about this game that I'm developing. So, what I want to do is, I instead of upcoming events, because there's no real events associated with this game because it doesn't exist yet. I think what I want to do is I want to talk about the different aspects of the project, right? So, I've got two sections here and upcoming events, and but maybe what I want to do is I want to talk about the fact that I'm developing a couple of different aspects of this game. I'm developing both a board game and an app, a digital app that you can use to interact with the game. So instead of upcoming events, I could rename this projects and then put in new pictures in both these sections and a little bit of information that talks about each of the two projects. And also, once again, just to mention it, you can see that there's also, this is a 3-column layout, and there's two little areas here that are left open to put content in. Now, so I've decided that I want to change this to be projects, so I can simply retype that. And then now that I think about it, there's actually three different areas that I want to talk about with these projects. There's a comic book that I'm developing that's about this story that the game that is within the game, and then there's the game itself, which has a couple different aspects, the board game and the app. So I think what I'll do is split this up into talking about the comic over here. So I'll go ahead and put this in as like a placeholder for that information. And then here I want to talk about the game. So I'll go ahead and type that in. Now, as I said, I update regularly. You can update whenever you think is appropriate. Okay, so let's talk about how we can prepare images to put in here and how we can upload those and some of the stylistic changes we want to make. So the first thing we might consider doing is checking out this placeholder content. The reason I like using WordPress themes that come with templates with placeholders in them is there's a couple reasons. One, it gives you a pre-created layout that you can work with. You can always make changes to it, but at least you've got something to start with. And two, it gives you some content which is already sized to go in that layout. So if you want to, you can put in your own content and you can match it to the size of the content that's there already, and that makes your job a little easier. So for example, on this website, I want to put a picture here, which would be reflective of the comic book for this project, and a picture here, which would be reflective of the game. And I want both of them to be to look good and be intriguing enough to get you to press this button to learn more about it. So the first thing I can do is I can look over here and I can see that this picture is here, and of course this is where it is, where you would update the picture. So I could click on it, and it shows me my media library, which has all the existing images that I've uploaded. And you'll notice that most of these are the placeholder content, right? Now, if I look over here, because I've clicked on a specific picture, it'll give me the information about that picture, which is very valuable. It tells me the width and the height of the picture in pixels, 644 by 402, right? So what I can do is I can take that information, I can go into Photoshop and I can take a picture of the comic book cover, right? And then I can go ahead and crop that so that it is the appropriate size. For example, I'll show you what the comic book cover looks like. Let's see, let me go back. It's in a slightly different file than this. Here we go. So here's the full comic book cover for this Wildcord comic book. And so what I did was I made a selection of this, which would basically be a cropped out section of it, which would approximately, but be 402 pixels high, by that 600 and whatever, let's see, 644, so that I can produce a picture that was approximately the same size. Now, the other image that I want to use is one that relates to the game. And so what I did was I created a new image over here, and it's got an image that would be sort of a placeholder content for the game box, what the game might look like. And what I've done is I've made the size of this because this graphic was created already, so it's not going to be exactly 402 by 6 something, right? But if I resize the height to 402, then the width comes out to about 560. So that's close enough. It doesn't have to be, exactly 644. You just have to pick one number to work with, the width or the height. I tend to pick the height because then I can put two pictures next to each other and have them be the same height and have them look good. So, okay, so 402 is the number that I picked, the height of this image. And so, I resized this image here to 402 pixels high, and I put it on its own layer. But then what I did was I took a section of this picture here, the cover, and I copied it, and then I just simply pasted it over here on top of this document, which is already the right size. It's already 402 pixels high. In fact, it's also sized with the same width as that. So instead of making two separate images, I basically made one master image, and then all of the subsequent images I'm going to make from that, I just put them in, copy and paste them in as layers, and then everything is the correct size. Okay, so then you can save each of these. I recommend saving as pings. That's my favorite file format for the web. And you can save those on your desktop at 72 pixels per inch, right? Make sure that you go into the image size and set it to 72, which is the resolution for the web. Okay, so I saved both of those, and now I have them available to me. So I can drop in new media. So for this first one here, this is the one for the comic. So I want to click Insert Media. Let's see. So I'll click here, and then I want to click Upload Files, Select Files. So I have to search for this. So I can just type in what it's called. This is what I saved it as, and upload it. And then you see that it uploads, it gets a little check mark there. If you want to, you can put some alt text in here, like I can call this, Wildcord comic, and that will help with people who are using alternative software to access websites, like people who are visually impaired. If they can't see the website, then a computer program will read the name of the picture. That's what alt text is used for, but it's also helpful with search engines. It can help you identify the content on your page. You can put in a caption and a description if you like, and so on and so forth. So we're going to click Insert Media, and that's going to come in, and it's going to fit that size pretty well. It's a little smaller width-wise than the old picture, but not much, and it doesn't make much of a difference. Now you will notice something strange here, which is, you can look at the saturation of the picture over here in this little preview, and then look at it here and see, wow, that's just very different. There's something weird going on. And what it is there's a pre-created filter that has been dropped on this picture, and we don't even realize it. And in order to find that out, we have to go over here into this style section. Now in the style section, this is where you can change the width. Notice my width is only 88%. So, what it did was it built it for like that 644 or whatever, and mine was 5 something. So it only used less than 100% of the width. So I could always increase it just by this slider right here. Opacity, of course, is the transparency of the picture. I feel like we want it to be fully opaque so we can see it. But this is the section where you can add these filters in that'll do things like change colors or make things look a little different, make them look almost like Instagram filters or something like that. Well, I'm not really nuts about the way this is looking because it's not the way that the comic book cover looks. So I can click on this little button to edit my filters, or I can reset my filters by clicking on this, right? So let's see, if we click on this button, notice the different options we have. We can blur the photos, we can change the brightness or contrast, the saturation, the hue. So these are essentially, this is like the hue saturation Photoshop filter plus blur thrown in. So that's kind of nice to know that that's available. However, as I said, I don't like whatever the hell they did. I don't like the settings. I don't like the filter. So I'm just going to reset back to default and watch how this picture changes when I press this. See how it got all its saturation and color back? Okay. So we have to keep that in mind, and of course we can update this because the odds are pretty good that something similar was applied to this picture over here. So we probably want to keep that in mind and make sure that we turn off any filter when we're editing this photo. So let me go ahead and click on this photo now and do the same process, right? I'm going to click here. I'm going to choose to upload file and then select file. And I'm going to go ahead and get the file for the game cover. Okay, and once again, we can call this, let's see, put in some alt text there. We can put a caption description if we want. Click Insert Media. Okay, and you can see it comes in the same size because, as I said, I made it on the same master file, right? Now, because we know that filter exists already, let's go ahead, or was put on this one. The odds are good it was put on that one too. Let's go into Style. Let's watch this one, how it changes when I remove the filter. And you can see it got a little darker, a little more saturated. Didn't seem like it was as intense a change as this one, but it was probably the same. Just the colors in this are different than this, so it looks different. Okay, so now we got our two pictures in there, and we can hit our update button. Okay, so now that I'm looking at this, I'm thinking about this word projects, and I'm thinking, well, projects makes me think these are things that are, being worked on but are not necessarily available. It's almost like, I'm an artist and these are projects I'm working on. I don't want that to be the message that I'm sending out, and so this word is sending out the wrong message. So, I could change this. There's a couple of different possibilities of what I could say. I could say that I want this to be media, right? Like different mediums that I'm putting that on, but that seems kind of weird as well. So how about we just go with comics and games, right? And that seems a little nicer to me as far as like inviting and a little more down to earth and more descriptive actually of what's here. So I'll go ahead and update that. Now the next task that falls to us is to figure out what we're going to do about the description here. Right now we've got some lorem ipsum text, some Greek text here that basically says nothing, right? So what we need is really a brief description of this comic project. Well, fortunately, um, this comic already exists. It's on my website, so there is a description here, but you can see this is a longer paragraph description. Now we don't want to put all that in because it's probably too much. Someone could click. That's the idea for clicking the Learn More button, is to get more information. So maybe we just want to get like this first sentence or two, and then go back to the site here. And there's two places we can paste this in. We can paste it in here, or we can also go over here and just paste the information in. And you can see that it pops up over here. It's more information than was there before. And ideally less is more especially on the front page of a website like this. But what if we just stick with that for now? Because it looks like a pretty good description of the comic. Wild Court is a comic series that tells the story of a 9-year-old girl named Lydia Lightstorm who falls asleep while playing piano in her living room, wakes up in a land of music and magic. Okay, that sounds pretty intriguing to me. Like I said, it's longer than the old one, but this is placeholder content. We can break the rules if it's more appropriate for what we're doing. Okay, so now we need a description for the game. And one trick here is however many lines you use for the content on the left, you want to use the same amount of lines for the content on the right, because for the same reason that we made these pictures the same height, you want things to be consistent, because otherwise they have sort of a masonry look. And when I say masonry, I mean the stone tiles that are used sometimes, especially in pavement, where one tile is very large and one is smaller, and so one is taller than the other next to it, and it looks weird. That's called a masonry layout. And those layouts exist in WordPress for things like photography and portfolio sites. And sometimes those look kind of cool. I've kind of gotten over them personally. The first time I saw them, I thought, wow, this is different. It's great. And then I found it kind of visually annoying. So, whatever your aesthetic is fine. But I prefer the idea that things are similar size and they have the same amount of lines in text descriptions so that they line up, the buttons line up and everything. Okay, so that means I need to get a description of the game that is about the same 4 lines here. Okay, and so to put some text in here for the game section, I have some text that I brought up, which is a short description of the game. And so I can go ahead and copy this text and then put it in. Can highlight this area over here and paste it in. And you can see that there's just too much here. It goes a couple lines too long, and it actually looks like too much text as well. So I want to go back there and maybe, as an alternative, don't use this second line here. Maybe just copy this top part and go back in, highlight everything, paste in the new text, and there you go. So Dragon's Hearth is the name of this game. It's a board game that pits kingdoms against each other and the dragon lords who rule the land. Each player must manage their resources if they want to survive, including livestock, farms, villages, and armies. Okay, sounds good and looks good, right? So now what we've done, so far today is we got rid of that section, the quote here that we didn't want. Obviously you can get rid of any placeholder content or sections that don't work for you in these templates, or you can save them for later if you think you can update them with some valuable information. Then this section here, we updated this to a comics and games section. We tried a couple different names in comics and games, what worked out. We put in some pictures, got rid of the filters, made sure they were the same height, and updated the headlines here for what the sections were, and then either grab some descriptions that we had laying around, or possibly handwrite some descriptions for the objects that you're putting on your website. And then, of course, we'll eventually link these buttons to further content about this. So we can click Update, and we can always, take a look at our work after we've done it. And so this looks good. I'm not missing any sort of quotes section there at all. Maybe after some of this stuff is released, the nice thing about quotes is, they can inspire people to try your work. So maybe after these, this game is released to the public and it's got some reviews, maybe that quote will give me the idea to put a review quote of 5-star review or something like that right there. But you can see, we have the nice section here and the pictures, and we've got that sort of pre-formatted drop shadow, which makes this pop out a little bit more. One thing that I notice is we are using the orange button over here, and of course we're down to the red buttons down here. So to be more consistent, I can change these to the orange button. So let me go up here. Let's see if I can easily get that orange color of the button. I can click on this and then go to Style. I can click on this, and there's my color of my button, which I can copy. And of course, remember that the dividers are that color as well. So whenever we see those, we'll want to make a change. Oh, there's one right there, speaking of it. So I can click on that divider. I can go to Style. There's the color. I can update that to my little orangey color. And then, of course, do the same with the buttons here. So here's a button, Style. Let's see. This one is a little more hidden where the color is. Is it background color? That's scary. Who knows? I don't really know which uh, one of these it is. So, like you, I might have to experiment. So let's just try. We'll put this in here. Oh, there you go. That is the one. Background color. Okay. And so then we click here with this style, background color, and then we put that in as well. Okay, and now we're happy because we have that looking the way we want. Okay, so as I've said in the past, I'm going to do a little bit of work on this website every class just to show you guys what the different possibilities are, ways that you can format content and put it in different layouts, different choices that you have with special effects like filters and recoloring things to think about as far as like headlines and text content and all the other aspects of creating your website. So now let's jump over here to this PDF that I put on the website, which is called Website Considerations. So I'd like you to click on that and take a look at that. And this is what it looks like. Let's go over here to this. Some things to consider when making a website. So these are things to think about as you're planning out your project, and it would be could serve sort of as a roadmap for you for the future when you make websites for other people or continue to make websites for yourself. So one of the first questions you can ask is what type of website is it that you want to make? Is the focus of the site going to be on selling things? Is it going to be what we call a brochure site, which is um, basically, you know what a printed brochure is, like a trifold brochure that would tell somebody about a company. That's what it is. It's basically just information about a service or a company or a product. Is it an educational site, or like in my case, is it an entertainment site where you're selling something that will be entertaining, like comic books or games? So what theme will you pick? And I'm suggesting for this project that you use something like the Astra or Ocean WP theme, WordPress theme, because it gives you pre-made layouts and placeholder content. It says, what theme best fits the industry for your website? Is there already a starter theme for that industry in the templates for your WordPress theme? So for example, if you go look at either the Astra or the Ocean WP themes, um, or templates, I should say, there's ones for yoga places and for workout places and for places that sell T-shirts. Maybe there's one for realtors. So you should look in there and see, what's available, because you might just want to start off with one of those templates. So, for example, if we jump over here to the Astra website and scroll down to the bottom where all the themes are, we can click See All Sites. You can see that they already have sites made up for a whole bunch of industries, right? So that's for dogs. This is the one that we use, or that I'm using, which is a travel site. Here's one for a store, and they name them. Here's one for education, and so on and so forth. So you can look through these and see if there's already one that exists, and maybe that would be a starter template for you. Okay. Um, so let's see. What do the websites for other companies in the industry look like? In what ways do you want to look the same, and in what ways do you want to be different? So, for example, if we were looking for, let's use this one as an example. If we wanted to have a theme to make T-shirts, how do we want our website to look similar to other websites to what the expectations are? In other words, we want to have our logo up there, a big, nice, cool T-shirt logo, and we want to have a big picture of a T-shirt here. And how do we want to differentiate ourselves from the competition? Like if most websites have a white background, do we want ours to have black? If most websites have just one picture of a T-shirt here, do we want to have three? Do we want to have a sale every time somebody comes, and that changes regularly? So in some ways you want to be similar so people can kind of recognize the product and the type of site it is. In other ways you want to be different so you can stand out a little bit. Okay, what type of content will you put? What type of content will you put in my website? Okay, we should say in your website here. I'll go ahead and change that real quick. Um, will it be public domain, i.e. free content? If so, where will you get it? What stock photo, video, and audio sites will you use? So, for example, if you're doing a website that's just informational, let's say it's public health information, all that information is public and you can get it off of other websites. Or if you're doing, for example, a website about Alice in Wonderland, the famous story, all of that information is in the public domain now, so you can access it for free. All the pictures and text and everything, you could put that on your website without having to pay any kind of licensing for it. So you have to think about the content and where you're going to get it. Is it free or do you have to pay for it? Now, if you decide that you're making a portfolio site, how do you choose which work to display? Are you going to go visit other portfolio websites and once again make yours similar? Or do you have a special niche in which you work that you want to emphasize? So, for example, let's say you make sculptures out of soap or something like that. Maybe that's one of the first categories you lead with to show how different you are. Okay, who's your audience? So, to what demographic are you trying to appeal? What does your audience want and need, and how can you give it to them? And will they be accessing your site via mobile, desktop, or both? So, say for example that you were doing a website for a startup or an imaginary startup, and what it was going to be was a social media company, social media marketing company. Well, obviously, you're catering to a young audience that is mobile based. So you're going to want to make sure you might do what's called mobile first design, which is first make the mobile version of your website and make that, optimize it for younger people who are going everywhere on their phones, and then secondarily make sure that it looks good on desktops. You want it to look good everywhere, but you definitely want to prioritize the mobile audience and the younger audience because that's your demographic. And then finally here, what do you want to achieve with your website? Are you just trying to distribute information, like I said about, healthcare was the example I gave before, or maybe it's politics and election year, or maybe you're trying to educate people about some issue. Is that what you want to achieve, and how do you achieve that? Are you trying to get a job? Is it a portfolio website, like we mentioned before, is one possibility, and your goal is to get a job? How do you do that? Do you put your resume up? Do you put references? Do you put several different forms of contact information, social media links so they can check out your Facebook page and uh, your your portfolio at ArtStation? What else do you put on there? Or maybe you're trying to start a business, right? In that case, is your goal conversion? In other words, conversion is a word for making online sales. Are you trying to convert your audiences to paying customers? Or maybe you're trying to raise money for a cause. Maybe you're trying to raise money for friends or family who have been hurt by the pandemic. Maybe there's people who lost a job, and you're doing like a GoFundMe type of fundraiser. So these are some considerations you should have when making a website. If you want, you can read through this and maybe even answer these questions right below here. You can download the PDF. If you have Acrobat Professional, you can edit it, or you can just open up a different document and sort of write the answers to each of these questions, and that will give you a roadmap for the website you're making. Or just use this as a reference when you're making a website to come back and remind yourself some things that you should think about. Okay, so just to sort of summarize here, um, I'd like you to download and look at that website considerations PDF, which is what we just looked at, and use that to give yourself ideas for how you're going to lay out your website. We looked at some examples of how to edit the website today. Um, Once again, we're using the Astra theme. Let me go over here to one that's finished. Using the Astra theme and of course Elementor to make changes to the site and making considerations about content and the way it looks and the way it's laid out. And then of course there's the actual website itself that you guys are working on. So make sure that you think about all the things you want to put in your website, and then start going out there and researching, similar websites in the industry, where you're going to get your content, what free, video and photo sites are you going to use, what free vector graphics, what are you going to create on your own, and how are you going to put that whole thing together, and start working on that website. And be sure to let me know if you have any questions or you want to bounce anything off me. You can always email me and say, hey, I was thinking of doing a website like this. What are your ideas? Or I have these two ideas. Which one do you think would be better, would look better in my portfolio? So let me know if you have questions. You can also write them in the forums here. And that's it for today. Have a great weekend, and I will talk to you again on Monday.